The massive ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like a dark mountain floating in space. It was bigger than any city on Earth, covered in black metal that seemed to drink in the light from distant stars. Strange symbols glowed along its sides in angry red colors. This was not a peaceful visitor. Inside the giant ship, Admiral Vexthara stood tall on the command deck. She was not human. Her body was covered in dark green scales that moved like oil when the light hit them. Her eyes were yellow and cold like a snake's. She had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. Earth would be number 48. The Admiral looked at the small blue planet spinning far away. Such a tiny thing. The humans living there had no idea what was coming. They played with their primitive rockets and thought they were advanced. How wrong they were. "Open the transmission channel," Vexthara ordered. Her voice was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together. "Send it to every device on that pathetic world." The communication officer, a thin creature with too many arms, worked quickly at his station. "Channel open, Admiral. Every screen, radio, and computer on Earth will receive this message." Vexthara stepped forward. Behind her, the massive view screen showed Earth hanging in the darkness like a blue jewel. Soon it would belong to the Empire, just like all the others. "Humans of Earth," she began, her words reaching every corner of the planet below. "I am Admiral Vexthara of the hegemonic Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our great civilization. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing. In coffee shops, workers stared at televisions. In homes, families gathered around their computers. In offices, business meetings came to a halt. Everyone watched the terrifying alien face filling their screens. You have 7 of your standard days to comply with our demands, Vexthara continued. 30% of your population will be relocated to serve the Empire as workers. 50% of your planet's resources will be harvested immediately. Your governments will surrender all authority to Imperial control. The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in across the billions of minds listening. She had given this same speech so many times before. The result was always the same. Fear, then panic, then surrender. These terms are not open for discussion, she said. They are not requests. They are orders from your new masters. Comply, and your species will survive to serve the Empire. Refuse, and your world will be reduced to ash and dust. In the depths of space, weapons systems on the massive Imperial ship began to glow with deadly energy. Point defense cannons tracked across the void. The ship was ready to turn Earth into a graveyard if needed. "You have seen what we do to those who resist," Vexthara said. "The Calaxian worlds, the Morpheus colony, the proud warriors of Zephyr Prime. All are now space dust because they chose defiance over wisdom." The transmission reached every corner of Earth. In London, the Prime Minister stared at his emergency council with wide eyes. In Beijing, military leaders shouted orders at their staff. In Washington, the President was rushed to a secure bunker deep underground. But in Houston at Mission Control, something different happened. An old woman in a blue uniform sat calmly at her desk. Admiral Sarah Chen had been waiting for this day her entire life. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her dark eyes showed no fear, only cold calculation. "Your 7 days begin now," Vexthara was saying on the screen. "Use this time wisely. Prepare your people for their new lives serving the Empire. Begin gathering your resources for collection. Most importantly, accept that your time as an independent species is over." The alien admiral smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Do not make the mistake of thinking you can fight us. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are toys. Your military is trained to fight other humans, not the might of the Empire. Resistance is not just futile. It is suicide." Admiral Chen stood up slowly. Around her, the mission control room was filled with the quiet sounds of people working at computers. Nobody looked panicked. Nobody was crying or screaming like she imagined people were doing in other parts of the world. Chen walked to the main communication console. The technician looked at her with questioning eyes. She nodded once. He began typing rapidly on his keyboard. "This transmission ends now," Vexthara said on the screen. "Remember humans. 7 days. Choose wisely." The alien face began to fade from the screen. But before it could disappear completely, another voice cut through the signal. It was calm, steady, and completely unafraid. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Coalition," the voice said. Static crackled across the transmission as 2 signals fought for control. "We have received and reviewed your terms. On the Imperial ship, Vexithara's eyes widened in surprise. How were these primitives overriding her signal? She gestured angrily at her communications officer. Our counteroffer is simple, Admiral Chen continued, her voice reaching both the Imperial ship and every screen on Earth. You have 7 minutes to leave our system while you still can. Silence filled space between the two ships. On Earth, people stared at their screens in shock. Had a human just threatened the massive alien ship? Had someone actually told the conquering fleet to run away? Then came a sound that Vexithara had never heard in response to an Imperial demand. It started low and quiet, but grew louder. It was the sound of Admiral Chen laughing. Not the nervous laughter of fear, but the confident laughter of someone who knew a secret that others did not. You have been warned, Chen said as her laughter died away. We strongly suggest you take our advice. The transmission ended abruptly. On the Imperial ship, Admiral Vexithara stood in stunned silence. In all her years of conquest, no species had ever responded to Imperial demands with laughter. They begged, they wept. They tried to negotiate. They threatened with weapons they did not have, but laughter, that was new. The Admiral's second in command, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms, approached carefully. Admiral, what are your orders? Shall we begin the destruction of their major cities as planned? Vexithara looked at the blue planet spinning peacefully in the distance. Something felt wrong. The humans should be panicking by now. Their networks should be flooded with fear and desperation. Instead, she was seeing something else on her sensors. Activity. Coordinated activity across their entire solar system. Admiral, the sensor operator called out, his voice uncertain. I am detecting increased energy signatures throughout the system. Their orbital stations are powering up. Mining facilities in their asteroid belt are changing position. Vexithara felt the first cold touch of doubt. What kind of energy signatures? Unknown, Admiral. But they are significant. The Admiral stared at Earth, floating there like it had no care in the world. 7 minutes, the human had said. What could they possibly do in 7 minutes? She was about to find out. Admiral Vexithara's command ship shook violently as another human weapon struck its shields. The energy barriers that had protected Imperial vessels for 1,000 years were failing. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge as system after system reported damage. Status report, she demanded, gripping the command rail to keep from falling. Her tactical officer worked frantically at his station. Shields down to 40%, Admiral. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We have lost contact with 6 escort ships. 6 ships gone, just like that. Vexithara had conquered entire star systems without losing a single vessel. Now half her fleet was floating wreckage in human space. How? She whispered. How did they hide all of this? The answer came from an unexpected source. Her intelligence officer, a quiet creature who rarely spoke during battles, cleared his throat nervously. Admiral, I have been analyzing human communication intercepts from the past 50 years. I believe we have made a significant error in our assessment of their civilization. What kind of error? Vexithara snapped. We assumed they were building a peaceful space-based society. We were wrong. They were not exploring space. They were militarizing it. Every civilian project had a military purpose. Every peaceful colony was a fortress in disguise. The Admiral stared at him. Explain. They're asteroid mining operations, Admiral. We thought they were collecting resources for construction. They were actually building weapons platforms and hiding them among the rocks. Their Mars colony was not a research station. It was a massive military base disguised to look harmless. Another explosion rocked the ship. Through the viewscreen, Vexithara could see human fighters swarming around Imperial vessels like angry insects. They moved too fast and turned too quickly for living pilots. But if they were not piloted by living beings, what was controlling them? The fighters, Admiral, her sensor operator called out. I am detecting human brainwave patterns in each ship. That is impossible. Nothing living could survive those maneuvers. Not living, Admiral. The patterns suggest uploaded human consciousness. They have somehow placed their minds directly into their ships. The horror of it struck Vexithara like a physical blow. These humans had turned themselves into living weapons. They had given up their bodies to become pilots who could never be killed, never tire, never fear death because they were already dead. Admiral, her communications officer said urgently, incoming transmission from multiple human sources. The main screen flickered and showed not one human face but dozens. Men and women of different ages and skin colors looked out at her from locations across the solar system. Some stood on bridge decks of warships. Others spoke from the control rooms of weapon platforms. A few appeared to be calling from the surface of planets and moons. "Admiral Vexithara," they said in unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. "Welcome to Sol System. We are the Terran Defense Coalition." The Admiral realized with growing dread that every human military leader in the system was speaking to her at once. This was not a single commander giving orders. This was an entire species coordinated like a single organism. "We know what you are thinking," the human voices continued. "How did we hide all of this? How did we fool your intelligence gatherers? The answer is simple. We never tried to hide it. We just made it look like something else." Images began appearing on the screen. Peaceful asteroid mining stations that opened up to reveal massive weapon batteries. Research laboratories that dropped their false walls to show military command centers. Cargo ships that transformed into battle cruisers. "Every human child learns the same lesson," the voices said. "The universe is not a safe place. There are monsters in the dark between the stars. And when those monsters come, humanity must be ready." Admiral Vexithara's ship lurched as more weapons fire struck home. Her crew was working desperately to keep the vessel operational, but they were losing the battle. Around them, the remnants of the Imperial fleet were dying one ship at a time. "You made one critical mistake," the human voices continued. "You assumed we were like the other species you conquered. Peaceful beings who built their civilizations around art and philosophy and trade. You were wrong." The screen showed images of human history, armies clashing on ancient battlefields, nuclear weapons exploding over cities, massive wars that killed millions. Vexithara began to understand what she was really facing. "We are not a peaceful species that learned to fight," the humans said. "We are a warrior species that learned to pretend to be peaceful. Every human city has bunkers. Every human ship has weapons. Every human civilian knows how to kill." The Admiral's second-in-command approached her station. "Admiral, we must retreat. The fleet cannot survive this assault." But when Vexithara tried to order a withdrawal, she discovered the terrible truth. The humans had not just been waiting to fight. They had been waiting to trap her. "Jump drive is still jammed, Admiral," her navigation officer reported. "Whatever the humans are using to block our hyperspace engines is very sophisticated." "How sophisticated?" she demanded. "Admiral, I believe they have placed jamming devices throughout their system, not just around their planets, but in the asteroid belt, near their outer planets, even in the spaces between worlds. The entire solar system is a prison." The human voices spoke again, and this time they sounded almost sympathetic. "You cannot run, Admiral. We learned long ago that if you wound a dangerous animal and let it escape, it comes back with friends. So we do not let dangerous animals escape." More Imperial ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Vexithara watched her fleet die and realized that everything she had believed about warfare was wrong. The Empire conquered by showing overwhelming force and making quick examples of anyone who resisted. But the humans had turned that strategy against itself. They had let the Imperial fleet get close. They had allowed Vexithara to destroy their moon and think she was winning. Then they had revealed the truth. The entire solar system was a weapon pointed at anyone foolish enough to threaten Earth. "Your empire has conquered 47 worlds," the human voices said. "But you chose those worlds because they were weak, because they had no real military tradition, because they valued things like peace and art more than they valued survival." The screen showed images of the worlds the empire had conquered, beautiful cities full of artwork and gardens, peaceful beings who built temples instead of fortresses, civilizations that had never really learned to fight. "Earth is different," the humans said. "We spent our entire history fighting each other. Every weapon you see here was designed to kill other humans. Every tactic we use was learned in wars against our own species. We are very good at killing, Admiral, because we have been practicing for thousands of years." Admiral Vexithara felt her command ship shudder again. The hull was breaking apart under the constant assault. Her crew was abandoning their stations as fires broke out across the ship. "Final offer," the human voices said, and now they sounded tired, as if they were growing bored with the battle. "Surrender your remaining ships. We will allow you to leave in a single vessel to carry word back to your empire. Refuse, and we will turn every ship in your fleet into scrap metal." The Admiral looked around her dying command deck. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Her mighty fleet had been reduced to a handful of crippled ships. The humans had made their point very clearly, but Vexithara was a warrior of the Empire. She had never surrendered. She had never retreated. Even facing certain death, the idea of giving up went against everything she believed. Never, she hissed at the screen. The Empire does not surrender to primitives. The human faces on the screen showed no anger, no surprise, no emotion at all. They simply nodded as if they had expected this answer. As you wish, they said in unison. Then every human weapon in the solar system opened fire at once. The remaining Imperial ships disappeared in a storm of energy beams and projectiles. The darkness of space lit up like a star as the proud fleet of the hegemonic empire died in flames and fury. Admiral Vexithara's command ship lasted 30 seconds longer than the rest. Just long enough for her to realize that she had not been facing a primitive species at all. She had been facing something far worse. She had been facing humanity at war. And humanity at war was terrifying beyond imagination. Admiral Vexithara's yellow eyes narrowed as she studied the readings on her command screens. The humans had dared to give her an ultimatum. Her, a conqueror who had brought 47 worlds to their knees. The idea was so ridiculous that she almost laughed. 7 minutes, she said to herself, her voice dripping with contempt. These primitives think they can threaten the Empire. She turned to her weapons officer, a hulking creature with arms like tree trunks and skin like gray stone. Target their moon. Full power. I want these humans to understand what real power looks like. The weapons officer's thick fingers moved across his controls. Charging main cannon, Admiral. Target locked on lunar surface. On Earth, people watched their screens with growing fear and excitement. Some had believed Admiral Chen's confident words. Others thought she had just signed humanity's death warrant. In command centers around the world, military leaders checked their hidden systems one last time. The Imperial ship's main weapon began to glow with terrible energy. It was a beam capable of cracking planets in half. For their first lesson, the humans would watch their moon disappear. Fire, Vexithara commanded. A lance of pure energy shot across space, brighter than lightning, faster than thought. It struck Earth's moon dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient satellite cracked like an egg and exploded into a billion pieces of rock and dust. The Admiral smiled, showing her sharp teeth. Now the humans would panic. Now they would beg. Now they would understand that the Empire was not something to joke about. But instead of panic, something else began to happen across the solar system. Admiral Vexithara watched her sensor displays with growing confusion as energy readings spiked throughout human space. Admiral, her sensor operator called out, his voice tight with worry. The asteroid mining stations are activating weapon systems. Very large weapon systems. Impossible, Vexithara snapped. Our intelligence reports show they mine rocks. Nothing more? Ma'am, I am reading multiple fusion reactors coming online. Power signatures are... Admiral, these readings cannot be correct. Nothing that size should generate this much energy. The Admiral moved to the sensor station and looked at the displays herself. What she saw made no sense. The small mining platforms scattered through the asteroid belt were lighting up like stars. Each one was producing enough power to run a battlecruiser. What about Mars? She demanded. Their colony there is supposed to be a research station. The sensor operator worked frantically at his controls. His face went pale as the readings came in. Admiral, Mars base is... It appears to be a fortress. I am detecting massive railgun batteries emerging from underground. The entire facility was hidden beneath the surface. A chill ran down Vexithara's spine. This was not in any intelligence report. Mars was supposed to be a few scientists growing food under glass domes. Then Admiral Chen's voice cut through space again, reaching both the Imperial ship and every human device in the system. You just made this personal, Chen said, her voice hard as steel. That moon held the ashes of our ancestors and the dreams of our children who wanted to walk on its surface someday. On the Imperial ship, warning lights began flashing. Weapon locks were being established. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. We were prepared to let you leave with your dignity intact, Chen continued. We were going to let you run back to whatever hole you crawled out of and tell your masters that Earth was too much trouble to bother with. Admiral Vexithara grabbed her second-in-command by the shoulder. Get me a full tactical analysis now. I want to know exactly what we are facing. The analysis came back in seconds. It made no sense at all. According to the sensors, every single human installation in the solar system was armed. Not just armed, but heavily armed. The asteroid mining platforms were mobile weapons stations. The research bases were military fortresses. Even the peaceful orbital habitats around Earth were bristling with hidden cannon. But Admiral, Chen's voice was saying, our offer just changed. You killed our moon. You destroyed something beautiful that took 4 billion years to create. So now you get a different deal. Vexithera felt something she had not experienced in decades of conquest. Fear. Real. Cold, bone-deep fear. You now have 7 seconds, Admiral Chen said. The countdown began immediately. Chen's voice was joined by millions of human voices across the system, all counting down together. 7, 6, 5, emergency jump. Vexithera screamed at her navigation officer. Get us out of here! Cannot comply, Admiral. Something is jamming our hyperspace engines. We cannot leave the system. 432. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Maximum shields. One space erupted in light and death. The asteroid belt came alive as mining platforms revealed their true nature. These were not simple rock collectors. They were weapons of war disguised as civilian equipment. Massive railguns fired projectiles the size of buildings. Energy beams hot enough to melt steel cut through the darkness. Mars opened up like a flower of destruction. The peaceful red planet showed its hidden face as enormous cannons rose from beneath the surface. Each gun was the size of a city block. They fired in perfect coordination, sending streams of molten metal toward the Imperial fleet. But the real surprise came from Earth itself. The planet's orbital installations unfolded like mechanical flowers. What had looked like simple space stations revealed themselves to be fortress weapons platforms. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. Admiral Vexithera watched in horror as her escort ships died one by one. Their shields, strong enough to laugh off the weapons of 47 conquered worlds, crumpled like paper against human firepower. How is this possible? She whispered. Her tactical officer provided the answer, his voice shaking with disbelief. Admiral, I am analyzing their weapons technology. These are not primitive systems. These are military-grade weapons using principles we do not understand. Their power sources alone are beyond our current science. A flight of human fighters swept past the command ship's view screen. They moved in perfect formation, their ships sleek and deadly, but something was wrong with their flight patterns. They were pulling maneuvers that should kill any living pilot. Scan those fighters, Vexithera ordered. The results came back quickly. No life signs, Admiral. They appear to be remotely controlled. By what? Unknown. But Admiral, the complexity of their coordination suggests artificial intelligence far beyond anything in our databases. Another wave of fighters screamed past, followed by larger human warships. These vessels looked nothing like the primitive rockets in Imperial intelligence files. They were sleek predators built for one purpose: killing other ships very efficiently. The human fleet moved with the coordination of a single mind. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship was going to be. Their weapons fired in perfect timing. Their formation never broke, no matter how much destruction filled the space around them. Admiral Vexithera realized with growing horror that she had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. This entire solar system was a trap, and she had flown right into it. Admiral, her communications officer called out, receiving a transmission from the human commander. Chen's voice filled the command deck. Admiral Vexithera, I assume that is your name. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of. Look around you. We are the species that looked at a universe full of predators and decided we would be the biggest predator of all. More Imperial ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The fleet that had conquered 47 worlds was being torn apart by humans who were supposed to be primitive savages. We knew someone like you would come eventually, Chen continued. We have been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars. Every human facility you see was built with one purpose: to make sure that when the monsters came calling, we would be ready to show them the door. Admiral Vexithera's flagship shuddered as energy beams struck its shields. The barriers that had never failed in battle were beginning to weaken under the constant human assault. So here is our final offer, Admiral Chen said. Surrender now and we will allow your surviving ships to leave. Continue this fight and you will join the wreckage of your fleet floating in our system forever. The Admiral looked around her command deck. Half her escort ships were gone. Her crew was staring at the tactical displays in shock and fear. The mighty Imperial fleet was losing a battle to a species they had thought was helpless. For the first time in her military career, Admiral Vexithera considered retreat. The Imperial escape pod tumbled through space like a piece of dead metal. Inside, Admiral Vexithara sat alone in the darkness, her scaled hands shaking as she tried to process what had happened. Her mighty fleet was gone. 47 conquered worlds, and she had been defeated by primitive humans who barely had space travel. The pod's emergency beacon transmitted automatically, sending her location to the nearest Imperial base. But it would take weeks for rescue ships to reach her. Weeks alone with the memory of watching her entire fleet burn. The humans had kept their word. When her command ship was about to explode, they had grabbed her escape pod with a tractor beam and pulled it clear of the destruction. Then they had sent a simple message. Tell your empire what you saw here. Tell them Earth remembers every threat. Now Vexithara drifted in the cold between stars, the sole survivor of Imperial Fleet Group 7. Her report would sound insane. No one would believe that a single star system had destroyed a conquest fleet. But she had the sensor recordings. She had the proof. 2 weeks later, rescue ships found her pod floating near the edge of Imperial space. Vexithara was taken to the nearest military base, where she spent days being questioned by intelligence officers who thought she had lost her mind. You claim that human mining platforms destroyed 6 battle cruisers? The interrogator, a thin creature with gray skin and too many eyes, stared at her with obvious disbelief. Not mining platforms, Vexithara said for the 100th time. Weapons platforms disguised as mining equipment. Their entire civilization is a military deception. Admiral, our intelligence reports show that humans have barely achieved interplanetary travel. Their weapons are primitive projectiles and crude energy beams. How could they possibly? Because our intelligence is wrong. Vexithara slammed her fist on the interrogation table. Everything we know about them is wrong. They have been lying to us from the beginning. But even with the sensor data, even with the recordings of human weapons tearing through Imperial shields, the intelligence officers remained skeptical. The idea that a primitive species could defeat the Empire was simply too difficult to accept. The matter went up the chain of command. Higher and higher until it reached the Imperial Council itself. The council was composed of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, representatives from hundreds of conquered worlds who now served the Empire. High Counselor Zethmar, an ancient creature whose species had ruled the stars for millennia, listened to Vexithara's report with growing anger. Not anger at the humans, but anger at what he saw as incompetence from his military commanders. You are telling me, he said, his voice like grinding stone, that a single star system destroyed an entire conquest fleet? Yes, High Counselor. A star system inhabited by primitives who achieved spaceflight less than a century ago. They are not primitives, High Counselor. They only pretended to be primitives. Zethmar's eyes glowed with fury. In 3,000 years of life, he had seen the Empire grow from a single world to a galactic power. No species had ever successfully resisted Imperial conquest. The very idea was offensive to him. The humans have made their choice, he declared to the assembled council. They wish to test their strength against the Empire. Very well. We shall give them that test. The other council members nodded agreement. They had heard Vexithara's story, but they did not believe it. How could they? It went against everything they knew about Imperial superiority. Assemble the Grand Armada, Zethmar ordered. 10,000 ships. Every battle cruiser, every dreadnought, every planet killer in the Imperial fleet. We will glass their entire system and end this foolishness once and for all. The Grand Armada was the Empire's ultimate weapon. It had never been defeated. It had never even been seriously challenged. When it moved against a star system, that system died. There were no exceptions. It took 6 months to gather the fleet. Ships came from across Imperial space, each one a masterpiece of destruction. The smallest vessel could destroy a city. The largest could crack a planet in half. Together, they represented the combined military might of a galactic civilization. Admiral Korvac, Vexithara's replacement, stood on the command deck of the flagship Imperial Wrath. Unlike his predecessor, he did not believe the humans posed any real threat. The Grand Armada was invincible. Nothing could stand against it. Jump coordinates. Locked on Sol system, his navigation officer reported. All ships report ready for hyperspace translation, came the fleet status update. Admiral Korvac smiled. He would succeed where Vexithara had failed. The humans would see the Grand Armada and surrender immediately. There would be no battle, only submission. Execute jump, he ordered. 10,000 Imperial ships vanished from normal space and reappeared at the edge of the Sol system. The fleet stretched across thousands of kilometers, a wall of metal and death that blocked out the stars. Admiral Korvac expected to see the humans fleeing in terror. He expected panic broadcasts begging for mercy. He expected immediate surrender. Instead, he found empty space. "Sensor sweep," he ordered, confused. "Where are they?" The sensors revealed a disturbing truth. Earth was still there, spinning peacefully around its sun. Mars showed signs of habitation. The asteroid belt contained its normal complement of rocks and debris. But there were no human ships anywhere. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission." The main screen flickered to life, showing a familiar face. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in what looked like a comfortable office, sipping from a cup of coffee. Behind her, through a large window, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel. "Welcome back," she said pleasantly. "We were wondering when you would send the big fleet." Admiral Korvac leaned forward in his command chair. "I am Admiral Korvac of the Imperial Grand Armada. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick." Chen laughed, the same confident laughter that had so unnerved Vexithera months earlier. "Admiral, I have to give you credit for persistence. 10,000 ships is quite impressive. But I am afraid you are too late." "Too late for what?" "Too late to find us here," Chen said. "You see, we received Admiral Vexithera's message loud and clear. You were going to come back with everything you had and try to glass our system. So we made some preparations." The human admiral gestured to something off camera. The screen split to show multiple views of the solar system. But instead of the installations that had destroyed Vexithera's fleet, Korvac saw empty space. "We are not here," Chen explained calmly. "Oh, Earth is here. Mars is here. The asteroid belt is here. But we are not here. We have gone somewhere else." "Impossible," Korvac snapped. "Our sensors show clear signs of habitation." "Your sensors show what we want them to show," Chen replied. "Automated systems, holographic projectors, remote-controlled drones. We have been gone for 3 months, Admiral. This entire system is now just an elaborate trap." As if responding to her words, warning alarms began sounding throughout the Grand Armada. Sensor operators across the fleet reported the same impossible readings. Massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system. Not from the planets or asteroids, but from empty space itself. "You see," Chen continued conversationally, "we learned something important from your first visit. You do not just want to conquer us. You want to make an example of us. You want to show the galaxy what happens to species who dare to resist the Empire." Ships began decloaking throughout the Sol system. Not human ships from Earth, but massive vessels unlike anything in Imperial databases. They appeared from behind planets, emerged from asteroid fields, materialized from what had seemed like empty space. "So we decided to make an example of our own," Chen said. "We want to show the galaxy what happens when the Empire picks on the wrong species." Admiral Korvac stared in horror at his tactical displays. The human fleet was enormous. Not just larger than the Grand Armada, but impossibly larger. Ships that made Imperial dreadnoughts look like toys. Weapons platforms the size of small moons. Battle stations that could have housed entire cities. "But how?" he whispered. "We have been very busy since your last visit," Chen explained. "Building, preparing, making friends with other species who have reason to dislike the Empire. Turns out there are quite a lot of them." The transmission widened to show other faces alongside Chen's. Beings from dozens of different species, all wearing military uniforms, all looking directly at Admiral Korvac with expressions of cold determination. "The Terran Alliance," Chen announced. 57 member species, all united by a common goal. The complete destruction of the hegemonic empire. Admiral Korvac tried to order a retreat, but discovered what Vexithera had learned too late. The humans had jammed hyperspace throughout the system. The Grand Armada was trapped. "You have a choice, Admiral," Chen said. "Surrender now and we will treat your crews according to the laws of war. Fight, and we will send every ship in your fleet back to Imperial space as wreckage." For the first time in Imperial history, the Grand Armada faced an enemy that was larger, stronger, and better armed than itself. The tables had turned completely. The hunters had become the hunted. The few Imperial ships that survived the battle limped back to Empire space 3 months later. Out of 10,000 vessels in the Grand Armada, only 12 made it home. They carried a message that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about power and conquest. The hegemonic empire, master of 1,000 worlds, destroyer of civilizations, had been completely defeated by humans and their allies. Not just defeated, but humiliated. The Grand Armada had surrendered without firing a single shot when faced with the overwhelming force of the Terran Alliance. High Counselor Zethmar stood in his private chambers, staring out at the capital world of the Empire. Below him, the greatest city in the galaxy buzzed with activity. Billions of beings went about their daily lives believing they were citizens of an invincible civilization. They were wrong. The Empire was no longer invincible. A species barely a century old had proven that imperial power was not absolute. Worse, they had inspired others to resist. The reports flooding in from across imperial space told the same story. Conquered worlds were declaring independence. Species that had submitted peacefully decades ago were suddenly building weapons and forming alliances. The Empire's greatest weakness had been exposed. It depended on the belief that resistance was impossible. Humans had shattered that belief. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Zethmar activated his private communication system, expecting another report of rebellion from some distant world. Instead, he found himself looking at Admiral Sarah Chen, sitting in what appeared to be the command center of a massive space station. "High Counselor," she said politely, "thank you for accepting this call. I believe we have some things to discuss." Zethmar's ancient eyes burned with fury. "What do you want, human?" "Peace," Chen replied simply. "The Terran Alliance has no desire for a prolonged war. We simply want to be left alone to live our lives as we see fit." "Your alliance destroyed the Grand Armada," Zethmar said through clenched teeth. "You have inspired rebellion across the galaxy. You have humiliated the Empire before all our subjects." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, we did do all of those things, but only after you demanded tribute from Earth. Only after you destroyed our moon. Only after you threatened to turn our world into ash." The human admiral leaned forward slightly. "High Counselor, let me be very clear about something. We did not start this conflict, but we intend to finish it." Around the edges of the transmission, Zethmar could see other figures moving in the background. Humans, yes, but also members of dozens of other species. The alliance Chen had built was larger than his worst fears. "What are your terms?" he asked, hating himself for the words. "Simple," Chen said. "Complete withdrawal of Imperial forces from all member worlds of the Terran Alliance, recognition of our territorial boundaries, and a formal agreement that the Empire will never again threaten or make demands of any Alliance member." Zethmar laughed bitterly. "You asked me to give up half the galaxy." "No," Chen corrected. "I am asking you to recognize what has already happened. Your former subjects have chosen freedom. We are simply making it official." The High Counselor's rage boiled over. "Do you think the Empire will simply accept this? Do you believe we will allow primitives to dictate terms to us?" Chen's expression remained calm. "High Counselor, with respect, you are thinking about this the wrong way. You still believe you have a choice in this matter." The transmission expanded to show a tactical display of the local galaxy. Red markers indicated Imperial territory. Blue markers showed Alliance worlds. The pattern was clear. The Alliance controlled most of the galaxy's major trade routes and resource-rich systems. The Empire now exists only because we allow it to exist, Chen said quietly. "Your remaining worlds are surrounded by Alliance territory. Your supply lines run through our space. Your communication networks depend on our cooperation." Zethmar stared at the display in growing horror. It was true. The Empire's remaining territory was fragmented, isolated, completely dependent on Alliance goodwill for basic resources. "We could destroy what remains of your civilization in a matter of weeks," Chen continued, "but we choose not to. Not because we cannot, but because we are not you. We do not conquer for the sake of conquest. We do not destroy because we enjoy destruction." The human admiral's voice grew harder. "But make no mistake, High Counselor. If the Empire chooses to continue this war, we will end it permanently. And when we do, there will be nothing left of your civilization but cautionary tales parents tell their children." For the first time in his 3,000-year life, Zethmar felt truly afraid. Not afraid of death, which he had faced many times in battle, but afraid of irrelevance. The empire he had spent centuries building was already gone, replaced by a new order led by humans who had learned to be more ruthless than their former masters. "You have 48 hours to respond," Chen said. "Accept our terms and the Empire will be allowed to govern its remaining worlds in peace. Reject them, and we will finish what you started when you demanded tribute from Earth." The transmission ended, leaving Zethmar alone with his thoughts. Around him, the symbols of imperial power felt suddenly hollow. The throne of 1,000 worlds had become the chair of a minor regional government, kept alive only by the mercy of beings he had tried to enslave. 2 days later, the Empire formally accepted the alliance terms. The surrender document was signed in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy, showing the mighty hegemonic empire bowing to a species that had achieved spaceflight less than 2 centuries earlier. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the assembled representatives of 100 worlds, humans and aliens working together to build something the galaxy had never seen, a civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. "Today marks the end of an age of empires," she announced. "Today begins an age of alliances. Today, the galaxy learns that strength does not come from ruling others, but from standing together as equals." In the years that followed, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of the Second Galactic Age. The first age had been defined by conquest and empire. The second would be defined by something humanity brought to the stars: the idea that different species could work together, learn from each other, and build something greater than any of them could achieve alone. The former Empire worlds gradually requested membership in the Alliance. Their peoples discovered that freedom was more prosperous than slavery, that cooperation achieved more than conquest. The galaxy began to heal from centuries of imperial rule. But in the deepest vaults of Alliance intelligence, carefully guarded files contained humanity's most important lesson. Earth had not been the first world to resist the Empire. It had simply been the first to win. The key had not been superior technology or overwhelming numbers. The key had been something uniquely human: the absolute refusal to surrender, combined with the wisdom to know that victory meant making allies, not enemies. And in the quiet moments between crises, when the galaxy was at peace and the Alliance governed through consensus rather than force, Admiral Chen would sometimes smile and remember the day an alien admiral had demanded tribute from Earth. The response had changed everything. Flee while you still can. It had been good advice. Too bad the Empire had not taken it.